Mullet here, coming at you live, man. Trying to do some long form video here, so I'm gonna write some stuff down here on this paper. And where did Mullet come from? I come from a little town, Rochester, Indiana, and 7,000, 8,000 people, you know. And I once got arrested and was in jail, and I was gonna get bonded out, but they said one condition: you got to cut your hair off. Sounds stupid, but I said no. So I stayed in jail. So, you know, I always loved the image, and, you know, I was always told I was funny and stuff, and I should do something like this. So here I am, sharing, giving. I want to learn how to fix tube amps someday so I can share it with other people and everything, because my JCM TSL 122 always breaks down, and it's it's a long way. It's like 200-mile round trip to the guy that fixes it, and I've had it in the shop 3 times. Anyways, my long-term goal is to get monetized with the YouTube channel, and then get more subscribers, and then upgrade my equipment and everything along the way. You know, one time I was hitchhiking, I can remember, back from Vegas, and it's always the other side of the highway. Everybody honks and waves, and yay, man, you know, it's cool. And then I got picked up by these people outside of Nashville. There was a couple, and they're like, "Hey, man, you got a guitar there? You obviously play, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm on my way back to Indiana from Las Vegas. I went south out there, and I'm heading back home where I live." And they're like, "Well, look, man, we're in the process of recutting a track at the studio, and we seen you, just ironically, you know, blessing from God himself, you know, you're in the car with us and stuff. Can we take you there?" And I was like, I don't know, what kind of music is it? And at the time, they were like, "Oh, it's country music." Well, I was always like an Ozzy, Metallica, Kiss fan, and really country music, long-haired country boy or something like that, you know, or you know, something like that, Charlie Daniels. I didn't really get into country all that much, you know, so I declined it. I wish I wouldn't have. Now it's a regret, but now I'm married with a kid and everything, so no looking back. So yeah, so after they dropped me off, they were sad, and I was glad to move on, you know, and everything. But I'll tell you, I don't know, I wondered if I should have went there. But, you know, hearing how expensive it was, this is back 30 years ago, you know, they probably would have hooked me up, because the band I was in Vegas, my uncle, his nickname was Flash. He had Flash, and we were all the Flood, Flash and the Flood. It's kind of catchy for a Las Vegas band. And he'd been out there for years playing. So, anyways, we played my first gig for money was in Vegas. And I got an injury on my index finger here, and I had a splint on it. So I was playing, at the time, bass, because I couldn't beat out the guitar player out there already, by far. So I played all my bass notes with 3 fingers, and I had a splint on this one because it got hit in the tailgate of a dump truck, and it was nasty. But the guy sewed her up. It was amazing. So luckily I still have that finger that was injured, and this one. But anyways, you know, so there I am, injured, and I was like, oh my God. So the drive in me to play was not stopping me. So I'm like, how am I going to do this? Well, I had a metal-sided splint, you know, and this side was kind of brace, and I learned those songs with these 3 fingers. And my first gig for money was in Vegas at a graduation party, and there was like 100 people there. I mean, it was outstanding. So there I was playing bass with 3 fingers, and when they introduced the band, you know, they're like, my uncle was like the leader of the band, Flash. He was Flash in the Flood. He's like, "Hey, this is my nephew, Bill, from Rochester, Indiana," or I don't know. And and everyone gave me a standing ovation. They couldn't believe it, and they were, you know, it was like the first time I had felt the energy of me playing through the speaker to them. They got it. They were there. I mean, it was amazing. It was in the daytime, like 2 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever, but it didn't matter what time it was. The energy was something I was like, this is why I'm doing this. Well, about 3 days later, the phone rang, and it was one of the people that were at that show, and they enjoyed it very well. And they said, hey, we want to offer you and your band a spot to play, at these numerous places around Vegas or wherever. And I only heard eavesdropped a little bit of the phone call, from the 10 feet away. And they're like, we're going to pay each one of you $500 a week and pay your hotel or whatever. Well, he lived in Vegas. He had his own house. Anyway, I'm like, oh my gosh, no. And then he says, well, I'm going to have to turn that down. I'm going to have to pass because I got a wife and a dog and all this other stuff. And I'm not understanding. I couldn't process it. So he hangs up the phone and, nonchalantly we're sitting there, and I'm like, hey, what was all that about? And he's like, oh yeah, that's nothing. That happens a lot out here, well, he'd been out there since the 70s and when it was a small town Vegas and played a few pretty good shows, Showboat, had his name in lights and whatever. I wasn't around then. I didn't get there till the 90s. So anyways, as the stories go on, I'm like, whoa, you should have took it. That's why I'm even here. And remember, I was the bass player, not the guitar player with a broken finger. That didn't matter. I did well. And so I'm like, oh, I'm out of here then. And then my uncle and I weren't really mad at each other because he'd hitchhiked to Vegas, to Rochester and Florida and all that many times, like myself back in the day. And it was just nothing but a thing. Now looking back, being 54 years old, you got a job, you got to keep it, whatever maintenance level you have to maintain. Mine's low, so I don't have to generate a lot of cash to do well. And the more money I get, the better my life gets and the better gear I'm going to get down the road. So that's cool. But that's when I come back and met up to people in Nashville and all that. Well, those things happened to me a lot over my lifespan. I was very lucky, people were giving. They always gave me and they always helped me out. I don't know why, if it was my personality or was it what it was. But anyway, looking back at other people's decisions that caused me or you or anybody else major grief, it's like, well, I have to do it myself. I have to promote myself. I have to put the work in. I have to do the practicing when over and over and over. And no one wants to be around during those times, trust me. And when they are, they don't want to hear it. And I've heard things like hang it up when I first started playing and things like that. Don't let that stop you, because when everyone's gone and you got your guitar or your bass or whatever and you're playing it and you feel the wood vibrating and the strings through you, you get a feeling in you that you can't explain. At least I can't. It makes me want to keep on going. So let's see. My cousin, he's a perfect painter and all this other, grew up doing that, knows it all. And I had a Charvel guitar and I traded this Flying V. It was a Kramer. I should have kept that thing. Even up at a pawn shop for this Charvel. Was brand new, but it was like a mauve pink or whatever, This is an 80s guitar. So a spaghetti toothpaste headstock. So I was like, yeah, you guys back then you could trade even up without any paperwork. So I walked in there with that V and the guy's like, hey, that's awesome. I go, I know. I recorded my first tape on that V and Paul Reed Smith and a Les Paul. But anyways, so I was like, you're gonna trade me even up for that, right? And they're like, yeah. So I traded him even up. There I am with that guitar. Well, I seem to not like the color, so I stripped it all down. And if you ever strip a guitar, just lightly sand the outer paint job and clear coat off. Don't take the white primer off of the inside. It locks the sound in or whatever it does. I'd taken mine down to the wood grain like that cabinet. And I thought, oh, I'm just going to stain it, And I bought some different stains and they all looked horrible. So then I was like, oh, my cousin, he's a master painter. So I took it over to Dale and he painted it with back then auto paint and clear coat. Well, every night he had it for a couple weeks, right? I stripped it down to the body, given the body. He painted it. And then every night he'd take it home while he was doing supper with his kid, homework, whatever. Him and his daughter, Janae, they were sanding it. And he took it back the next day and painted it. Well, it was like 13 clear coats on that thing. And I love that guitar. My buddy Todd, he had a Carvin single coil. humbucker single coil, so I put it in the front of that, and I had a Screaming Demon George Lynch pickup that I heard about, and it's just a little hotter than a Gibson, P90, PAF, or whatever they are, and I put it in there. So I had the super clean channel, and then I had that super good sustain and everything. So the guitar was fantastic, and I ended up buying a brand new Hot Rod, I think DeVille tube amp Fender, and anyway, I was working in a band, and I was working at a radio station as a roadie, where I'd set up this big B100B, and they had a Hummer, so I drove the Hummer there, and I'd close up the doors after I set it up, and I'd listen to rock music in there on low. But they're knocking on the window, and they're like, "Hey, you got to open the doors up," so we'd get her all jamming. It was awesome. I wasn't a big country fan. Anyways, so here I am, and then all of a sudden my job came to a halt, and I just bought a brand new Harley. So I had an uncle that lived in Florida, northern Florida, and I'm like, he had a trucking company, and this is during FEMA, and they were hauling pine tree logs to Georgia Pacific. It was all kinds of that. So it was back to back, much as you wanted to work, pulling logs and all that. So I rode my Harley down there in January 3rd, I think it was. I took off down there straight through, stopped one time in like Chattanooga or something. Get down there, started working for a while. Then that didn't work out. So then I went to Tallahassee and met a lady, and ended up living with her. And my family from up here, I talked to them on the phone. Well, all of a sudden they wanted to surprise me. So they drove down there, and they go, "Hey, we got a surprise for you." I'm like, "Oh, I love surprises. What is it?" And they go, "It's your freaking Charvel and your tube amp that you just bought." And I'm like, "All right." Because I had my main amp was a Randall 412 and a Kurt Hammett style Randall 100-watt HT rack mount head. So that's what I had, a rack mount head I laid on the Randall, and it absolutely jammed. That finally blew. But all of a sudden they showed up with that Charvel and that Fender, and I'm like, oh my God, I was planning on going back home as soon as it warmed up, like in March, right? So there I was, I'm playing my guitar down there. This is awesome. But when I was leaving, I only had my Harley. I had a Softail, a brand new one. I bought out of Kokomo, Indiana, and I rode it down there. I had it for a few months, and I had to take it to the break-in maintenance at Tallahassee, and they're like, "Hey, man, you ought to trade it in for this lowrider, brand new '07 black lowrider, so awesome, and we'll give you all your money back. We want you to have this, man. It's the last one." I'm like, okay. So I traded that, and I rode that back. So then I tried to get back in the local bands around here or whatever. I kind of jammed around. The one band that I'd left to go down there, my sister runs a TV station up in Elkhart, Indiana, out South Bend, WNIT, a PBS con, I think it is, and she'd been there for like 35 years, still there. But they had an open studio right on weekends. So my uncle Dale, he had a band. He's older than I am. He'd been to Vegas and played with Flash and bands and all that. And he come back here to get with a woman, I think, and get married or whatever. And his band played on the open studio a few times. So anyway, our band, I was like, "Cool, can we play on there?" And they're like, "Yeah." Well, you'd play a little bit of a song in the intro, like 2 measures of it, and then you play another one because there was a time slot. And then they did an interview after that on the air, and I was like, "Oh, I didn't think it was going to be me," but it was me. They had me do it. So it was me and a lady, and we're sitting there talking and everything about the bands and what we do and hang out and cruise around. And that was awesome. And then, so looking back, it's like, wow, I did all that stuff. But anyway, that tube amp and that Charvel down there, whoever has that, you can get a hold of me on messaging if you want to send that back to me. I'd love to have that stuff back. Anyways, water under the bridge. And then, this channel, to me, is the greatest thing, because I heard the CEO from YouTube saying he's looking for people like me with raw talent, low-grade equipment, just absolutely coming out of your soul, man. That's why Mullet, thinking, man, I've sit in jail, I've hitchhiked, people pull over when you're so tired in your guitar and it's so hot and you can barely even move your feet, and then they're honking the horn like, hurry up in the middle of nowhere, and you get up right by them, and then they take off and laugh and honk the horn. Don't do that to people. That's me. But anyways, you know, looking at all the times, if you're going to hitchhike, don't get into something you can't see in the back, like a van or something. Just get into something you can see, because it's just safe and for yourself. I used to smoke Marlboro Reds back then. I always heard keep a cigarette going in case you got to burn the person for getaway. I mean, that's crazy, but it's life. You know, Proverbs 15:16. You know, that's what I think. So it's like, you know, my gear. My wife's got a Flying V, and then 2 other Japanese made Jacksons. I've got my USA Jackson right here. I'm rebuilding my studio right now. The library in Lighters Ford, Indiana, on the Tippecanoe River, they gutted the whole place, man. And I know I has to be Fulton County paying for all that new material, because they threw away so much stuff that was nice. I couldn't believe it. And I have a little Toyota Prius, and our trucks are working right now, so we loaded a bunch of trips with that, because it's about like 5 miles. Anyway, I'm redoing my studio, man. I can't believe it. And this YouTube thing, I'm wanting subscribers, obviously, and I'm wanting to hang in there and teach you stuff. It's the more I learn, the more I'll teach you, because Mullet coming at you live, man.